Hey, I'm Shay, and welcome back to our practice. As you can tell, we're still working on back bends. Today, I'd like to talk about camel and bow pose. And these are probably going to be the last two back bends we talk about in this particular series, but the reason why I'm talking about them together is because they are essentially the same poses and different orientations. So I have a couple of props that I like to use for these poses, but it's kind of up to you if you decide to use them, or if you don't have them, you can always find alternatives, like just a regular house blanket, maybe even like a couch pillow or something that can kind of support the weight of your knees, and then either blocks, some heavy books, maybe even a couch behind you, potentially just not even using them at all, okay? So just kind of a couple props that I like to use for these poses. So starting with camel pose, we'll start on our knees, and we'll use the blanket. I usually like to start kind of this size, double it up so it kind of spans the width of your yoga mat, and both knees can comfortably fit. So again, just like bridge pose, if you haven't watched that video, hopefully I can remember to do that. I'd go and watch that one too. But similar to bridge pose, most of the time people do these poses with their legs too narrow, their thighs too narrow. Their hips are like here, but their thighs are here, and it's just never very comfortable. And you don't usually have a very stable base to work from. So again, I give you yoga teacher permission to take your knees as wide as your hips, maybe even a little bit wider, kind of depending upon what works, how it feels good, make the pose work for you. So we'll start on our knees, right, on the blanket, maybe even taking our blocks kind of outside of our heels if we decide we need them. Otherwise, you can tuck your toes under and bring your heels up a little bit higher, okay? Sometimes I even like to do that anyway. So you have your proptions here. And I'm going to start by taking my hands to the front of my hips, kind of pressing the front of my hips forward and lifting my chest from there. So just like all of the other back bends that we were doing, we want to engage the back of our body to open the front of our body. These muscles are hip extenders, spinal extenders. This is a spinal extension. So we want to make sure that we're using those muscles, okay? So we first start from an upright position, from a kneeling position, kind of pressing our hips forward into what feels like something solid. So just like when we were in bridge pose on our bellies, we were able to press our hips into something actually solid. But now we have this imagination of pressing our hips into something solid, okay? Now, you could even do this against a wall, and it can actually be solid. Okay, so from here, I'm lifting, I'm breathing as deeply as I can, and then I'm going to start to lean myself back, right? Notice I'm not making a back bend yet. I'm kind of leaning back in one line until I stop. And then from there, I'll take my hands to blocks or my heels, maybe even my low back if I don't have any of these props, and then start to fill out my back bend more, right? And I notice, just like all those other back bends, I'm breathing, I'm talking, right? I'm not going too far. My low back feels supported, not constricted. And then to get out of the pose, you'll reverse course, knock over your stuff, kind of pull your hips back in line with your ribs and your torso, and then bring everything back upright. Sit back on the heels for a second. It's definitely a harder way to enter and exit the pose, but making sure the stuff that does the pose itself is smart. This isn't an easy pose. It shouldn't be that easy. So we need to kind of reassess when it comes to our ego taking over in poses, okay? And then similarly, we'll talk about bow pose, okay? And then same thing. You can kind of keep a blanket under your hips if the ground is much too solid for you. Okay, so I'll start similarly to when I started cobra pose or locust pose. Nice. And then like I was doing that locust pose from before, I don't like where that blanket is situated. And then I'll start to bend the knees, possibly grab a hold of the feet, inner thighs hug, and then I lift with the strength of my back body. I don't like that blanket. And you can always choose to adjust, right? What you do initially may not be what you end up doing. And I think it's important for us to remind ourselves that we aren't just like static. Things change. Things are in flux. We learn and we do differently, okay? So whatever you need to do, you do it, even if that's possibly not grabbing the feet and making this more of that active locust pose from that last video. Inside or outside of the feet, options to use a strap so the legs can be further back. But notice how that pose looked a lot like camel pose. So kind of depending upon what works best for you, you can alternate. You can use one or the other. If you don't like being on your knees, maybe you do it on your belly instead. Maybe you do bridge pose and you just kind of realize how all of these back bends are interchangeable if you do them with proper intention. And then like what your goal to get out of it is how I would adjust, is how I would make that decision. I hope that helps. Go forth and do camel and bow pose. And I will see you again next time. Have a great day.